STAKK Nation, welcome back to the channel.
Champions.
Today we have another very special guest with us in the house. He is a Bitcoin enthusiast,
Yes, sir.
right, and an investor with a strong background in engineering and finance. Okay, with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Mark Harvey in the house.
The one and only.
Hello, Mark.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me. I look forward to this.
Absolutely. We are more than grateful that you took some time out to come hang out with us and talk about this incredible technology that has been placed before us to do what we may with it. Right? There is so many different angles that we can take on this thing from. But I think for me personally, at least I know that I like to just hear about everyone's introduction into this Bitcoin thing, because it's a very interesting one. It's not the conventional go to school, learn things, and you know exactly what you're aiming for.
Unless you went to Harvard.
Yeah, true. Yeah, unless you went, but even if you went to Harvard, right? Because people who have come out of Harvard themselves, we see a lot of them that still are not able to understand this technology.
Jerome
Right.
Powell,
Exactly.
SEC.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Well, I think that's more intellectual dishonesty because Gensler was teaching blockchain, so he knows. But for you, what was it? How did you dive into this? If you give us a quick rundown of your Bitcoin story, sorry.
Yeah, sure. I'm it's kind of my story kind of dates me a little bit, but I started in about 2014. I was always into investing, so I was like an analyst with like equities. So I was into stocks. I was like,
Right.
so I was like pretty well versed in like how markets and things like that work. Um, so 2014 came around, and I don't know if you guys remember, there was an exchange. It was called Mt. Gox. It was like
Yeah.
at the time it was like the only it was like the main Bitcoin exchange. I think they held like 7% of all the Bitcoin in the world on this one exchange. So it's like it was like really concentrated there. Anyway,
Absolutely.
that exchange blew up, or they got hacked, and the exchange went out of business, and people lost a lot of money, and Bitcoin went down from like, I think it was like $1,000, and it went down to like 150, and that's when it was in the news, and that's when I first heard about it. And of course, like everybody else, I was like, oh, it's probably dead. So I forgot about it, and then so October 2014, I remember reading like an article on like Market Watch or something like that, and it was saying how the price of Bitcoin was like $200, and I was like, how could it still be $200 after I thought that the thing died? So that was what sparked my interest, and then like that day, I think I used Coinbase or something at the time. I bought my first Bitcoin at that time, so I really didn't know what I was doing, but that's what sparked the interest, and the interest has just grown since then. Um, that's basically the story. So it's a background in equities and markets, and then I discovered Bitcoin through one of its famous blowups, and been learning and researching about it ever since. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. That's I think that's absolutely incredible. When you speak of what is the Mount Gox and Coinbase back in those days, I remember. I think Coinbase only had like Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bitcoin, and
Ethereum.
Bitcoin Cash. Yeah, and then there was Ethereum in there as well.
Yep.
Incredible times. Incredible times.
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I think it's quite interesting when from someone who is in the finance space, traditional finance space like yourself, and then seeing that transition happen later on down the line versus others who are in the same space as yourself, right? But do never make that transition. That is something I'd like for us to dive into a little bit into the show here. So because I find that it seems to be, I'm not sure what are the qualities, but there are certain people who understand the traditional finance space that eventually get the click while others don't. And I find that very fascinating. Double up.
No, I think
Over to you.
that's a really good question. It's almost like the left brain does not want to talk to the right brain. Uh,
Yeah,
tell us, tell us your journey of why you decided to look for that. Like, yes, you are into equities. Yeah, but you could just be like every other person and just say, you know what, this is a scam. This is not going anywhere, and just totally
yeah,
ignored it. But instead of ignoring it, you actually went in deeper. Tell us why, because I think we've been noticing the trend here on the show is that there are certain group of people that just would not never stop. They would just keep digging and trying to know more. And it seems like those that want to know more or research are the ones that eventually get it. So tell us your story.
yeah. I think there's definitely something to that. I think certain people they have like a natural tendency to just kind of like be curious more.
Mm,
It's just like a personality trait. I think that some people are just born with.
Personality trait.
I
Yep.
I think that and a lot of people that are like discovered Bitcoin early or dug into it early, I should say. A lot of people discovered it, but they didn't dig into it early. Um, they kind of have the trait of like it's kind of like intellectual curiosity.
yeah.
So it's hard for me to speak for myself, but when I was, when I was primarily just like an investor, an equity investor, I was like, so one of the other things I was big into was like Tesla. So if like it's similar in a way in that it was kind of like a misunderstood technology,
Right.
company. Similar in a way that Bitcoin is currently kind of like a misunderstood technology. So like historically, all my investing in equity is focused around technology anyway. So I think that that helped bridge the gap a little bit between like not knowing anything about Bitcoin and digging in and learning a lot about it. So yeah, I think that but my interest in stocks, the technology stocks, is just driven again. I think from like I've just always been like kind of a curious person. I just like to learn things. So yeah, I think that's really the best answer I have for that.
Yeah.
Like how I was able to bridge that gap. Yeah.
Did you initially come in for the profits? Did you think, hey, this is a great technology. It's starting to make sense. Tesla is buying it. It looks interesting. Let's just go buy another equity and make some profits. Was that the initial approach that you took?
No, I wish I had. I would have gone. I would have bought more, back in the day. But no, it was honestly. I think I bought $4 worth the first time I bought it. So it wasn't like I was like I did a big investment. Um, it was just more of a place of curiosity. I'm like, oh, I could lose a few bucks on this, and if I do, that's fine. Um, it wasn't until I like 2008, 2017 when it ran up really hard, and I was like, okay, what is this? Like, what's going on? Like, why is this going up so much?
My $4
There,
just became $20.
yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until then that I started to like really dig in. And then the bear market of 2018, that was a really rough one. I don't know if you guys were around for that, but it's at the same time that Safety had his book, The Bitcoin Standard, came out. So that was
Hmm.
like kind of like a pivotal moment for me, reading that book in the middle of the bear market. I had some Ethereum at the time, and then I was like, oh, I need to sell the Ethereum and just like go strictly Bitcoin, um,
Right.
and strictly Bitcoin since then. So yeah,
Hmm. It's a powerful thing. It's a very
yeah,
it, it's that now. It's very interesting. You mentioned Seferdin Amos' book there. We have it over there as well.
oh, nice, yeah.
Incredible, the Bitcoin Standard, right? Um, I highly recommend everyone read that book.
Hmm.
First of all,
Mhm.
it's absolutely incredible because for me, I'm not someone who has been, I don't have a finance background. I do have that curious mindset, and I think when the lockdown situation happened, because finances is something I never really gave too much thought to. But when the lockdown situation happened and I started just sitting there, we actually started off just doing options, trying to learn options and how the
Options
stock market
trading.
works and
Yeah.
all of these things.
Yeah.
Then eventually I start coming across this Bitcoin thing. What I find interesting for me, at least, for someone with no finance background, is that when I started reading this thing, something about it just seemed to make sense to me. It seemed like the most basic form of economics, how it should be, right? Maybe you know I grew up in Cameroon, right? And at that time there, it was an environment where there was no credit cards. So you can only spend what you have, and you have to work for what you have, right? And
Mhm.
so you cannot spend outside of that. Then I come to find out that, well, this is pretty much something called Austrian economics, which I believe it's embedded into how Bitcoin is built,
Mhm.
right? But when we speak with other people in the finance space, that this does not seem to click for them. Do you have any sort of maybe an idea or a different thought process as to why is it that some were well versed in finances just don't get Bitcoin, unable to make that connection, right, of holding your own value
Mhm.
and that financial sovereignty that comes with it, versus those who just look at it after a while and go, well, I'm in traditional finance, but this makes more sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tough question. I think that Keynesian economics is like it's not really based in any kind of like I would say like hard math or science,
Mm,
versus like Austrian economics. Like the background of it is like more of it, it's based in
I think it
based
goes
in
back to
reality.
like the simplest, how would you say, basics, right? Or
Yeah, it's principled.
yeah, basic
I,
principles. There you go. That's what I'm thinking
you could
of.
say.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Keynesian economics thing is a weird one. How we've gotten to this place. I think it probably has something to do with in the past 50 years since we've been off the gold standard, particularly in the United States, it's kind of prevailed. Um,
Hmm.
because it's basically alchemy. You're creating money where there was none before. It's an attempt to create value when none really exists. So
Yeah.
you're just pushing current problems to the future generation.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact the United States, the reserve currency of the world, is no longer backed by anything. So it's just like this thought process of like, oh, we can cause financial catastrophe, and whatever we do, we can bail out the system with a limitless amounts of printed paper
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Um, so it just kind of like if money is considered the base layer of everything, it just kind of like
Everything.
roots itself, and it
Yeah.
just kind of like grows from there. Um, yeah, that's probably the best answer I have for something like that. We're taught that in school.
Yeah.
Uh, because I was an engineer, and I was an engineer first, and then I went to grad school for finance. And so in engineering, a problem has to be it's not solved. You can't a thing doesn't work unless it actually works. Like you can't build a machine, you can't build a part that's not designed correctly. It's like it disobeys the laws of physics. For example, like
Mm-hmm.
the
Hmm.
part will break, or the machine will break, or the bridge will fall, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, economic systems are designed by kind of like politicians.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yes.
not basing their decisions off of like basic
Realistic.
yeah basic like math. Math
Yeah.
actually
It's not.
math.
It's not. Yeah. It's mathematically impossible. The stuff they are doing. It's
Yeah,
mathematically invalid. If you want to put it that way.
yeah, it's like for them like 1 + 1 = 3. It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And so you compare that with like the engineering background. Like nothing works unless the math works out. um, you know, I think that's where like maybe the bridge to like helping understand Bitcoin is,
Hmm.
because Bitcoin is a system that's rooted in mathematics. So it just works. As an engineer, I look at the system and I'm like, oh, that's something that works. It's
It
yeah.
has a logic.
Once you see that, you can't like unsee it. When you're
You
just like,
cannot
okay,
unsee
this is
it.
yeah,
There we go. Absolutely. I feel the same way. It's almost like a lighting bulb moment. At the
mhm,
moment when it just clicks in and you just can
yeah,
never roll back from that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely interesting. Right.
I was gonna say something though.
Yeah.
I think your engineering degree might have had something to do with it. Because for me, I think my background in computer science had something to do with it.
mhm,
Because we know we all know that there's a problem with the way money is impacting not just the environment but our lives. and the way we just go about life. But with a lot of people have accepted it. Some
Uh,
have ignored it.
mhm.
Some just go chasing after it, believing that if they have enough of it,
Mm.
they can wash away the problems. But then you read about a solution that could solve it and that actually goes to the basis of money. And majority of us are not educated on what money is, which is the problem. But then if you get a chance to understand what money is eventually, and then you read this book, you're like, wait a second, this is the solution.
Yeah.
Like, how do we create world problems out of fake money? And for me, I think it really started after World War II. But it could have started since 1919 with the old tax situation. But let's not go that far. Let's go to World War II. Let's all force the entire global economy to use the USD. But then we get off the USD and say, okay, you're no longer going to use the gold. We're just going to print fiat, paper money. So we went initially from using paper to represent money, but saying that it is pegged to gold, which we all knew eventually was being manipulated because you cannot trust human beings. And then we now took the gold, which was the strength of that paper, that IOU, we took that away. Now we just have an IOU out of trust me. Like,
Mhm.
you already could not trust you. Now you're telling me to even trust you more.
Yeah.
In engineering, in computer science, you have to initiate, you have to create the substance first. The substance, like when you write a code, it just doesn't show up. You have to initiate and create it first, which is where Bitcoin says you have to do the work to
Yeah.
create the money first before you have
Yeah.
money.
Mm.
And they skip that whole process and you just go straight to printing money. That impacts the environment, that impacts the law of nature.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that I mean, us, all of us speaking here, I think we're kind of like students of history. Another thing
Yeah.
that Safety's book does it shows you is that history is almost like repeating itself. Like there's
Mm.
empires, empires rise and then they devalue their currency, they go into debt, and then they collapse. You know, it happens time and time again. So yeah, it's kind of like human nature, I guess, to keep repeating that
Absolutely.
cycle. But of course, they didn't have an actual engineered solution for money in the past until now. So things
Exactly.
might things might be better.
But you know what's funny too, though. I think at some point we human beings always engineer something because we went from rocks to I think from seashells to rocks, and then we eventually went to gold. So we eventually kept engineering something as a way to fix the money. And the last engineered solution was 5,000 years ago, which was gold.
Mhm.
And then 2008 when was or let's say the 1970s was when we said actually 1970s it's major but not that major was when we said forget the gold which we've been using for 5,000 years, let's just use paper. That
Yeah,
wasn't that was not innovative at all. That was major theft.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy to think that again. That's a political decision. It's crazy to think that they thought that that would be sustainable. I mean, it's been 50 years, over
Mm.
50 years. It's still going, but you can. I think you can see signs of the system, showing its cracks with with $34 trillion of debt. The highest debt to GDP ratio since the end of
Absolutely.
World War II. Um, the highest debt to GDP ratio, and we're at a time of relative peace. We're not in World War II, so um, it puts us at a pretty weak positioning. So
Economic. Yeah.
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
Absolutely. Now, so here's one thing, and I think in the process of on the back of what you guys are we just discussed here,
Hmm.
getting off the gold standard and having this fiat money, which is not backed by anything, obviously, other than the fact that these people will just say it is. There is an article which you wrote, which I actually found very interesting
Hmm.
because it kind of really just enforced something that I've been saying on the show, which is that our sense of value
Hmm.
has been manipulated, right? Because it seems to me that you have to, I mean, there has to be some sort of manipulation going on to get pretty much the whole world to go, hey, we know that this is your value, which you've worked hard for, and you're storing it here. We're going to do the same thing, but we are not going to work for it. While you work hard for it, we're just going to print it,
Mhm.
right? And then that kind of also doubles and goes into other things like, well, no matter how hard you work, the Federal Reserve can always increase interest rates and all that sorts of
Taxes,
things.
other
They can crash
madness.
the markets to keep you at a disadvantage. Inflation is one of those things, right? It steals time from people as well. It steals their value. And you actually you pointed it out in this article here. Let me pull this up. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still watching this and you have not checked out Mr. Mark Harvey's page yet, please do so on
Follow
X.
him on
Okay.
X.
Oh,
The
appreciate it.
power of HRV.
Yes, this man is blessing you all with free knowledge. Okay,
All
strong
day, all the
knowledge
time.
every day on
All day.
X. Okay,
I
so
try my best.
hey, keep it going, sir. Oh, you also have your newsletter, which you
Yeah.
send out, and of
Subscribe,
course, Mark
subscribe.
Harvey Research, ladies and gentlemen. Please check that out. A
Thank you.
lot of good info there, right? Which brings me now to this one here, this article which you wrote here talks about the ETFs, the halving, baby boomers.
The boomers.
Yeah.
We love them.
Yes, and of course how Bitcoin will surpass gold. And we're going to dive into that. But before we do, I just want to touch on this value thing. There is a point here in this article, I believe it's around here, where you mentioned that, if society wants more gold, if there is a higher demand for gold, the miners will just dig up and print, I guess, excavate or
Mhm.
mine more gold. And obviously, this has been going forever. Gold mining has not stopped at any one point in time since the beginning of time, which would mean that this thing is not scarce.
Mhm.
Um, and so you pointed out here, and you look at the what is it, inelastic,
Yeah, supply demand.
right?
Mhm.
Asset, what is it called? Inelastic
Yeah.
feature or capability, or always say it, inelastic feature of Bitcoin as it is compared to gold itself. This is where I say our sense of value has been manipulated because, I mean, on a very basic level, the idea of scarce means that there will not be continuously more and more of them. Versus with Bitcoin, where there is just simply not going to be any more of this.
I laugh.
Yeah.
I laugh because
Yeah.
people invest in gold, and then when you compare your return on gold with inflation and time,
Yes.
and the amount of gold that keeps getting printed, like you said,
Yeah.
we have been manipulated on our value because you're literally getting stolen from, and you think that you're wealthy or you are invested.
Exactly. At least that's how I see it there. I mean, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on this one, Mark? How can people miss this for so long?
Yeah.
Literally acting like this is not happening.
Nobody has gotten rich investing in gold. I don't think. I could be the one person.
Hey! Don't tell Peter Schiff that, man.
Don't tell Peter Schiff.
Yeah.
Don't tell Peter
He
Schiff
got
that.
yeah. So yeah, the question was, so the Bitcoin, it kind of like it's one of those things. It's like another one of those light bulb moments when you realize that you can't make more of the thing. I think
Yeah.
people in general are just used to things not being like that. So Bitcoin being unique. So like every asset. So in this article, like I focused on gold, which is like kind of a good bogey for or a good comparison for I would say the first step of
Mm.
the Bitcoin's growth, surpassing the market cap of gold. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people realize that gold is does have some good features as far as its supply. It's hard to make more of, but when you compare it to an asset like Bitcoin, when you literally cannot make more of it, no matter how hard you try. I think people sometimes they overlook that as being like one of the most foundational uh, things that was invented with Bitcoin.
Of
Just
course.
yeah, it's super foundational, and people will compare it to gold, but even gold, if the price of gold goes up, if the demand for gold goes up, people will find a way to make gold. It's difficult to find, but I'm quite sure there's, for all intents and purposes, there's unlimited amounts of gold within the Earth's crust if you dig deep enough, or unexplored gold underneath the ocean. There's a lot.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
plentiful in Africa,
I mean,
bro.
we can only assume that there
yeah,
is unlimited amounts because we haven't got to a point where it seems like there's been scarcity in gold coming from the miners.
Yep.
So
India,
yeah,
South Africa,
yeah,
Ghana.
or diamonds. Remember diamonds? You know, those things are everywhere in Russia. It's crazy.
yeah. The price of those things, they don't even keep up with the rate of inflation. Gold has not even kept up with the rate of monetary inflation over like the past 40
Absolutely.
years, and it's supposed to be the hedge, right? It hasn't even kept up. So
Hey,
Mm.
it's a good transistor for your computer.
yeah, it can be used. It has
For your
industrial uses.
motherboard.
Wow, that's actually an interesting fact. You said for the past, is it the past 40 years? Gold
It
has not
might be
kept up with
longer. I think it's longer than that. It's probably
longer
since
than
like
that.
the, yeah, it's probably longer than that. It's probably since we went off the gold standard. It's probably since like 1971 or something like that. That was,
Mm.
yeah, just citing that off the top of my head. But yeah, the rate of the rate basically at which they're creating more money, monetary inflation, is outpacing the amount that gold has gone up for the
Yeah,
past 50 or so years. So yeah, it doesn't work. So like
it
I
doesn't.
don't think it's much. I don't think it's, I appreciate gold for what it is. It's like not owned by any like particular like you can own gold and it's like not controlled by the government. I get that aspect of it, so it's like a rainy day thing. But I just think the technology has been completely replaced by Bitcoin at this point. Um, and this cycle is going to be really interesting because Bitcoin's at the price where it's at the point where it's like kind of like nipping at its heels. Gold's 14 trillion,
Yeah.
Bitcoin's like over 1 trillion, so we have like a
Yeah.
14x.
Yes, and I want you to speak about that some more because you have that in this article as well. This is now going into the whole situation we find ourselves in right now. There's the
Mhm.
halving, there is the Bitcoin ETFs, right? And then of course there's this obviously
Countries
talk about,
adopting.
yeah, there's countries that are also adopting, and then there's of course there's the talk about uh, you know OTC Bitcoin not
There's
being available
there's
forever as
there's
well.
there's Arab money coming for it
Yes.
too.
So we'll just pass it on to you here, sir. Let us know where you think this thing is going based on your write-up, which you have here.
Yeah, so the ETFs, yeah, those have me very excited. Yeah, so yeah, I saw this post today from like the Bitcoin archive account.
Right.
Hmm.
He said that there's Ernst and Young. I actually have it here. Ernst and Young's estimates that there's 200 trillion of institutional assets that could potentially be allocated to something like a Bitcoin ETF.
You're going right.
Um,
Trillion.
you know,
Jesus, let's
200,
put that kind of money out there, man.
200 trillion. Yeah, I
Send
mean,
it to my bank account.
yeah. So like I would in my paper, I did a rough calculation of what did I have, 68 trillion. So they're way above me. But I just like I wrote out basically institutional investors. If you add pension funds, insurance funds, and retirement savers just within the United States, that's a
Mhm.
possible pool of $68 trillion that could potentially be allocated to Bitcoin. Yeah. So why that's important is that um, in my opinion, a portion of that will become allocated to Bitcoin. It's only a question of how much of that is going to be allocated to Bitcoin. So yeah, in the paper there, I just like did a simple assumption of 1%, which is probably conservative, but 1%,
Absolutely.
it makes sense. Maybe it'll start out at 1% over the next 10 years. It's a new
Hmm.
thing. Um, so 682 billion demand is if 1% of that. Um, but the point of me, doing the exercise in this paper here is that it's pretty much like for the next several years, say these pension funds go from 0 to 1% of their portfolio,
Yeah.
and they do their targets based off they do allocations based off targets. So let's say we're trying to get to 1%, and they'll try to stay there. So from
Hmm.
from from when they go from 0 to going to 1%,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't correct. I mean, somebody maybe when they're watching this to correct me if I'm wrong, but like I don't see how there's like virtually like limitless demand until you get to that point. It'll just like they'll keep acquiring Bitcoin ETFs until they get to the 1%, and 1% for them is like a lot. Um, it- so yeah,
Yeah, that's a lot of
that's
money.
the point I'm trying to make there. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, I
Question though is
estimate.
though,
Yeah,
question though is, are they going to be buying ETFs or are they going to be buying Bitcoin? Because who benefits from that equation is the BlackRocks and Fidelities. If this 401ks go and buy ETFs instead of the actual thing.
yeah. I think they'll go for the ETFs because, well, in a lot of cases, like these institutional investors have like legal mandates with their investors that they're of what they can invest in. So they'll say like we're allowed to invest in like ETFs, equities, bonds, or whatever. But they can't like go cold storage like Bitcoin with their clients' accounts. So they're not gonna the the ETFs allow them to put a ETF, sorry, a Bitcoin allocation. Before they couldn't just buy spot Bitcoin. They needed an instrument in order to do that. So the ETFs like kind of unlock the ability for the large institutional investors to allocate towards Bitcoin, whereas they couldn't before. Because they obviously, like I said, they're not going to like set up a hardware wallet and just put a client's assets on a Trezor or whatever. Yeah,
this, this is why I
Absolutely.
like Bitcoin. And this exact comment that you're making right now is the reason why I said once upon a time you were not allowed to touch Bitcoin because of there was some rule or some regulation somewhere that says that it wasn't real money. Isn't that the same thing that we're saying now? Is that apparently some guy has gotten his legs and hands into government, into law, into legals, and into finances, and now put all these restrictions on what you can do with your store of value that now prevents you from actually storing your value and now giving it to a third party to supposedly store your value for you. What's stopping somebody, because I'm sure it's a bunch of boomers that put those rules and regulations together. Boomers, we ain't coming for you out. We just think you have put together a bunch of useless nonsense regulations. What's stopping somebody from saying, okay, let's change that? Let's go back to the courtroom. Let's go to the legal documents and change that so let's all be able to store our own value. What's stopping them from doing that?
yeah. I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but I just think that like this like built-in law, it's built-in historical precedents are hard to change, and
Mhm.
also it's kind of like a learning curve. To be honest with you, I don't think that many, like for example, baby boomers, I don't think that they have an interest in like holding their own. Like I wish they did, I would, but I don't think they have an interest in like holding their own Bitcoin. They just want the price,
The gains.
appreciation from it. It's hard for them to like go and set up a new account and buy Bitcoin, and they're like, what is this thing? And then we're like, oh no, you can't keep it on exchange, and then they got like take it off exchange, and then no, they're not used to like holding their stocks like in a safe somewhere in their house, or in a safe deposit box or whatever. Um, so I think that bridge, like as much as like the hardcore Bitcoiner in me is like these guys need to like cold storage their own Bitcoin or whatever. I don't know if it was going to even happen.
Yeah.
Like for yeah, somebody who's older, like my like for like somebody like my mother's age, she it's just like not a good idea for somebody who's like in retirement age to like hold
Yeah.
their own.
There's definitely a learning curve there
But that
Yeah.
is the
to
market
overcome.
that is the value manipulation that we're talking about. I think the banks have done a really great job, or these fund managers have done a really great job making us believe that we cannot survive without them. Or maybe it's just the younger generation. Maybe the next generation will get it. And just we've just had this past two generations
Mm.
that are just stuck on, oh, let me give it to this person. That is their job.
Yeah.
Well, maybe as we transition over to this wealth transfer situation between the boomers and the millennials, right, and the younger generation,
Mm.
because um, it seems to me that obviously this system that we have right now. Yeah, I was watching this speech a while back, and Obama even said it. He said, this system that we have here is not something that anyone said this is the right way to do things, and everyone can also see that the thing is, like you mentioned earlier, this system that we have in place is definitely showing cracks, right?
Because you're an economic.
Yes, I think that you know so far to this point in time, it has been extremely. I'll give it its flowers, man. It's been extremely helpful in facilitating transactions and
Development
allowing
and
people to invest and
yeah.
develop over time. But at the same time, as well, like you mentioned, once you've gotten Bitcoin, it's like once you see it, you cannot unsee it, right? Because I'm looking at this thing from a perspective where we're trying to see what is happening 10 years, 20 years down the line, right? Because the same way people are printing money right now and forwarding it to the future for the future to deal with it.
Mhm.
Let's just say it's just me versus, the US government or something like that. And we are now 20 or 40 years into the future and I have a ton of Bitcoin. Not maybe I don't have a ton of Bitcoin. I just have enough Bitcoin and I'm still expected to pay taxes on something that is out of control, right? Because I think that that's the other part of it. As a society, we need to respect ourselves enough to go at some point, hey, let's stop the bleeding, which is this unrealistic printing that we're doing here. It cannot be paid off. It's just, simply the fact it cannot be paid off. However, we are still all being taxed, right, for something that cannot be paid off. In fact, our taxes are going up over time for something, again, that cannot be paid off. This is where I see the scam. So it seems to me that for us now, one thing that we have to be looking at is how do we change this situation for the future? How do we take control of this money or change the face of money as it is? Because, we now know that the way things are set up right now is a scam. Cannot undo that. A lot of investments, unless if they put Bitcoin into everything, are not even beating inflation, right? Whether it's real estate, gold, and all of these things. So the purpose of investing lost its beauty to me, except in the case of Bitcoin. Because we sit there and spend time researching companies,
Tesla is
right?
tanking right now.
Right. You're researching companies, you're looking at what they're doing, what their potential is, all of that good stuff. But it seems like that does not matter anymore.
Mhm.
I wonder what is I don't know, have you ever thought of any approach, right? This is not even like saying you give an answer because you know it, but I just want to know more of your thoughts, deeper thoughts on how you think of this Bitcoin thing. Have you ever given any thoughts as to how our generation can kind of take this thing and shift it radically?
I think the biggest thing for like the younger generation,
Hmm.
so like getting back to these ETFs, the younger generation, like our generation, like the millennials and lower, we actually have been the ones buying the Bitcoin. So we're the ones that hold the
Right.
actual physical Bitcoin.
This is true.
So when the baby boomer who has currently benefited from the system their entire life purchases an ETF, it's effectively transferring wealth from them to the people who actually hold the Bitcoin, the
Hmm.
actual asset themselves, which is for the most part the younger generations. So I think that's like really like kind of profound. Like the wealth transfer
Mm.
that's going to happen there because
Wow.
the boomers
That's
want
another way to
Bitcoin
look
too.
at it.
That's incredible, dude.
That's
I did not even
I
think about it
think about it
that
that
way.
way. Indirectly
Yeah,
I did
too.
not think about it that way. Okay.
yeah, the
Yes.
price of Bitcoin went up what 50% in like the past month or something like that. So all the cold storage millennials have benefited
Mm.
the most from that. As the boomers, the retirement funds, the pension funds buy the ETFs. I mean, I'm not saying that's all that's buying ETFs, but it's like a big portion, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important. I would say that the United States has a unique position where they can just print money
Yes.
and just buy Bitcoin, which I don't think they're doing, but it seems like such an obvious thing for the government to do. But that doesn't make me optimistic about the future because that just creates a more powerful government anyway.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so I guess the path that I'm most in favor of is individual hodlers throughout the world that benefit from the wealth transfer. And not only that, when a wealthy American boomer buys a Bitcoin ETF, everybody who holds Bitcoin, no matter what country on the planet,
Yeah.
benefits
Benefits
from
from that.
that
Yeah.
transfer. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So I think
I
it's
did
really
not
cool.
get that. I did not get that until you said that just now.
This is
Like,
incredible, man.
Bitcoin as a way of distributing wealth without you having to
Hand it over.
hand it over. Like, oh, my father worked so hard for
Yeah.
it. My father was a billionaire, right? And then you pass it on to your kid. But with Bitcoin, if your father was a billionaire and it buys Bitcoin,
Absolutely.
everybody gets rich, not
Yeah,
just the son.
it's pretty sweet.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
It's one of those. It's a rare thing in life where everybody can benefit. Everybody can benefit from this one thing. Um, it's pretty cool to see. Yeah,
Self-custody millennials.
Wow.
they're the big
That is
winners.
that is a great attribute. We
Yeah.
gotta
and
start using that.
Well, Mr. Mark, listen, man, we have to clip that one because that's the first time I've heard that.
Yep.
So
Oh,
we have to
awesome.
clip that
Yeah,
one and
yeah. I'll post it
watch
on
it.
my. I'll
Yes,
post it on my
Yes.
tab.
absolutely. I
Yes.
like that.
Post it on
Incredible.
your X.
Yeah,
Well, listen, we have the Bitcoin halving coming up. Okay, roughly every 4 years that this happens. Obviously, until we get to 21 million coins here. This article you wrote here, man, very powerful article. I don't like. There's just everything in it. Right. So
okay.
daily supply of the Bitcoin is going to go from 900 down to about 450 coins per day.
Chop chop.
What are some other things you see happening around this halving event for Bitcoin?
Yeah, yeah. The halving's obviously a pretty big deal. Yeah, so yeah, just again, this that's just like it highlights the supply dynamics of Bitcoin.
Right.
They're just there's it's set to get even crazier here in about what a month or so. Um, yeah. So yeah, so people that like might not know, like it'll reduce the amount of coins available for
Miners.
institutions, individuals, anybody to buy because
Absolutely.
the miners are always selling their coins into the market. So the amount of coins they're selling is going to get cut in half, and so in theory there'll be less coins available. Not in theory, definitely there'll be less coins
Yeah,
available.
definitely. Yeah.
Um, uh, it's coming against an asset that's already there's 97% of bitcoins have already been mined anyway, so it's like an
Yeah.
extremely not many bitcoins are coming out anyway, so this is it's
Mhm.
set to get even harder for people to get their hands on bitcoin. um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a big deal, and this is the first having also that bitcoin, ethereum used to be proof of work, and then somewhere a couple years ago they switched to proof of stake. So in my mind, Ethereum is just like out of the picture now. It's not a proof of work asset. It's not
Yeah.
really like in the same league. It's not gonna be competing for the same money at this point. Well, to a degree, it will, but I mean to the people that understand what they're investing in, they're not gonna necessarily choose between Ethereum or Bitcoin. So going into this having Bitcoin is the only one that is a proof of work asset. So that makes me really excited. I feel like Ethereum kind of shot themselves in the foot there,
Yeah.
taking the work out of the equation. Um, so yeah,
When you
yeah,
first heard about that Ethereum, when you first heard about Ethereum going from proof of work to
POS.
proof of stake, what were your how did you feel about that one? What were your thoughts on it?
yeah. This is after I had read Safety's book. Um,
Yeah.
so um, it was pretty this could play out to not my advantage, but it was pretty obvious to me that they kind of shot themselves in the foot. So not only did they like take the work out of the equation, so this like people say Bitcoin is not backed by anything, but Ethereum is backed by the same thing that like fiat money is backed by now. It's just like
Hmm.
trust in people. So they took that physical, that link to physical reality away.
Yep.
Where was I going with this? Oh yeah. It also highlighted the fact that there was somebody that can change the protocol. They did a major.
Yep.
That was a major thing that they did.
Yep.
So like looking at that, I'm like, oh, somebody can change it.
Hmm.
Like that
Hey.
just defeats the whole purpose. Like the Bitcoin is not supposed to be changed.
Someone can change it, and there's many other things that can happen to it. But I've always been fascinated by the fact that these people still call it decentralized.
Yeah.
Is that something that
In that
baffles
moment.
you as well?
it's a
Yeah,
marketing,
He said
marketing
name
thing.
only. That's the answer right there.
name only, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Interesting.
Well, I
Well,
want to jump on this proof of work
go ahead.
comment real quick.
Yeah.
So, at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about the importance of having to actually do work before you can create energy or use energy to create work and then create money. Just rule of nature. Ethereum going to proof of stake, exactly, basically just like you said, skipped all of that process and then went to the trust factor. Plus,
Mm.
now you gotta have money that is probably printed out of thin here to not be a validator on on a so-called blockchain that they
Yeah. I
created.
think it's like what 30 Ethereum to be a validator.
That's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
To make things worse, you basically now becomes the Federal Reserve
Mm.
of Ethereum because now you decide when interest rates goes up because you can increase or you can change.
Yeah. Well, sounds like shitcoinery
Yeah.
activity. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible to me that they decided to do that. And
Yeah.
you mentioned decentralization. That was not even a thing until Bitcoin came around, saying your thing is decentralized. So
Hmm.
when these like altcoins that say that they're decentralized, they're really just playing off of what Bitcoin really is. They're just saying,
Hmm.
oh, we're decentralized. We're like Bitcoin. It's not. It's in most cases. It's
It's
in
not.
all cases.
Hmm.
It's not true. I don't even know if
Yeah.
Dogecoin is decentralized. I mean, it's proof of work, but
Yeah,
it's
it's not
Yeah,
it's
it
decentralized.
is proof of work
yeah,
and it is peer to peer. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really done any much research on Dogecoin like that. Uh, but
yeah,
yeah, I agree with you there. I knew. Let me not say I knew. I had a feeling. Okay, a hunch, a spiritual ticklement that at some point in time,
Ticklement in your soul.
coined that term. I just made a new term there. Ticklement. It's like tickled, but anyway, so I knew that at some point in time, okay, something like that was going to happen. This is the reason why. I think it's just a simple fact that no one can find Satoshi. No one has ever been able to find Satoshi, and is going to stay that way. We all know if anyone wants to find Buterin, you can find him, and you can apply some pressure to get what you want. Right?
mhm,
There are some very powerful people in this world. We can make those things happen, and we saw it happen.
They already did that with the proof of stake
Um,
situation, right?
right.
World Economic Forum, saving the environment. Yeah,
Exactly,
right.
right. So they did that there. We can even go as far back as just cloud storage. I don't know if you're familiar with Kim.com, who this guy essentially created what you might consider a file transfer
File
situation.
share, music,
Yes,
movies, YouTube.
but then people started using it to download and share movies, and Hollywood got the White House to go to another country. I think it was in Switzerland or something like that. One of those countries over there, and they raided his house in another country and brought him to the U.S. And he does not even he does not do business in the U.S. or live here. It's the same thing we see with CZ, right? Whether people are with the altcoin situation or not, it is insane that they are capable of doing something on that level.
mhm.
And that's I mean, knowing those things, right, I knew that this Ethereum thing was not going to hold that proof of work for too long. Now, as we're approaching the end here, okay, I want to have some fun with this one here, Mark. You see,
Yeah,
in this write-up which you did here, he said Bitcoin price is far away from finding a local top, and I agree with you. Um, I think I did some technical analysis a while back. This is actually like one of the first times when I was like, you know what, the things that I am learning, we're definitely onto something. I feel confident about it because there's been multiple times now where we've looked at some things and we make some sort of prediction, right? We have multiple videos on this, and it turns out to be all right. In the case of Bitcoin, when I did some interesting technical analysis on it,
Astrology for men.
yes, as some people call it, astrology for men, the price target was one. Well, we crossed. It was what was it? It was 300,000, uh, $300,000 per Bitcoin. What was it for? I have to check that chart again. I was ranging between 350 to 400, and then maybe like 3 days later, Ark Invest came out with some analysis that they did. Not sure how they did it, but their price target was 500,000 for Bitcoin in the next 2 years. But then again, this was maybe 2 years ago, so
Yep,
we're
yep.
all a little bit off on the timing for sure.
During COVID.
Right. However, this is the fun part. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this guy on. I've seen him a couple times on X now, with the guy with the ponytail, who believes that Bitcoin is going to be the top is at 70K.
Oh,
He belie-
Garrett Salloway.
yeah, yeah, he
Yeah.
strongly believes that this top is at 70K, and from here we are pulling back massively. So I want to ask you: have you taken a short position yet?
Ah, come on, man.
I'm definitely,
That's a
I'm
joke.
definitely following.
No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding. No, what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, it's hilarious. But he's a trader, so I guess traders gonna trade. I'm just
Yeah,
not interested in I'm just not interested in what he's trying to do there. That's somebody who just doesn't understand what he's trading. He doesn't understand the asset. It's really wasting his time. Like, you don't have to do all that stuff. You'll make more returns not trying to short Bitcoin, but just buying it and holding it. Don't have to
just
trade
hold
around
it.
it. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Just hold it. And
Absolutely.
I think I calculated. I think last night I posted something like the compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin over the last 5 years was like, what did I say, 75%, 79%. Just holding. You don't have to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't get why people. I don't get why people do that, but trader is going to trade, I guess. Good luck to him, but I think unless he closes that short soon, he might get his face ripped off because of these ETF flows. He's trying to step in front of these ETF flows, and the demand there is just going to be so strong.
This is weird.
If it's a really smart trader, he will take his quick losses
I say, yeah, that man has two brain cells to rub together.
before you get
He
liquidated.
better exit that trade, otherwise it's gonna be game over.
Yeah.
Big shout out. All right, well, Mr. Mark, this has been absolutely incredible, man. I'm just gonna roll on to this final chat down here, and I just want you to just give us a walkthrough of your thoughts on what you have on here. So I think this is a very interesting one. Would you say this is your price prediction, if you will?
I would no. I read this report with like the $700,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I would say my guess is that within, like, say 2 years, Bitcoin will be somewhere around that price. This is just my opinion.
Mhm.
But just going into this having the what I guess you could call it the inflation rate, but the rate of issuance of Bitcoin is going to be lower than gold's. So the stock to flow ratio is going to be higher than gold's.
Higher than gold. Yep.
Yeah. For an asset that the supply is unchanging, also holders of the asset, we know what we own for the most part. I think we all have a price that we will sell some at, just realistically. But it's a lot, for me, it's a lot higher than where it is now. So yeah, and also last bull market, 2021, 2022, I feel like we didn't get, like, it wasn't a full market. There was all kinds of weird stuff going on. There's all kinds of those,
the FTX people and all that good stuff.
Lunas.
Yeah.
It was,
I think
the SEC's trying to change the definition of a security.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mess with
it
the
was,
flow of things.
So it was like, if you'd asked me back then, I was like, Bitcoin's going to go to $300,000 for sure. I was saying that in 2021. Obviously, never happened. But I think that it was kind of, China, China banning. I think it was. So I think the bull market was cut short.
Yeah.
So I think we're playing a little bit of catch up now. And it's this cycle. If we still have cycles, this cycle is unique in the fact that we have these ETF buyers. So that's huge. I think people even still are underestimating. But like I said, I think that these institutional investors are going to try to hit their 1% Bitcoin target, and it'll just be like up only until they've hit their targets. Like they're not like looking at the price and trying to trade in and out. They're just trying to get 1% exposure to Bitcoin.
1%. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that, in my opinion, it's just going to rip for the next 2 years, probably, 2 or so years, maybe longer than that. Gold after it got its ETF, it went up for 7 years. I think I wrote down there 7 years straight or something like that, 7 or 8 years straight.
Oh, wow.
Which is like crazy for something like gold, because it was flat for like the past the 20 years prior to that. So I
Yeah.
mean, you apply that same logic to Bitcoin. I think it's going to be. I think the halving cycles are probably over. I think the halving is going to matter less as time goes forward, and I
Yeah.
just think that the demand aspect from these institutions are just going to take over. And yeah, I mean, if you do some like basic math, I think $700,000, the size of gold is easy. That's just a stepping stone.
And if we consider that to the M1 money flow, and for example, let's say the dollar continues to lose its appreciation, um, then it might even go higher.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
so
know?
that's an important point too. So that's not even accounting for macro. So
Yeah.
this year, interest rates, it's an election year. I'm quite sure that interest rates are set to go down.
For
Um,
sure.
and quantitative easing is probably going to resume as banks
Mhm.
continue to fail. So that, yeah, I'm not even counting those like macro tailwinds
Yeah.
in
Absolutely.
what I wrote here. So yeah, yes, really optimistic for the next couple of years as far as the price of Bitcoin goes. I think it's just for the most part up only, in my opinion. We'll see if it plays out or not. But yeah,
So I would like to
Yeah.
add something. When we talk about the macros, right, let's talk about the indirect impact of Bitcoin. So we have the mining companies, we have Tesla, which apparently lately looks like Tesla has been accumulating secretly, and the people did not know. MSTR just took another $700 million in debt to buy more Bitcoin. Smart guy. Use the debt system. Get money printed out of thin air
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's really almost
and
like,
buy the real
taking the
asset.
printed money. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I wish I could do that.
you
You
could.
know, and I know you talk about Tesla. I'm a big Tesla investor. Right now, I know I'm kind of back in the red. MicroStrategy is doing well. My marathon is kind of okay. I had no choice. I have to buy I bit so that I don't get taxed on my retirement accounts. What do you think about those non-Bitcoin, not exactly Bitcoin, but Bitcoin-related companies or technologies?
yeah, yeah. So MicroStrategy, very bullish on MicroStrategy. Um, yeah, their theory has kind of like played out. It worked. So, and I like the fact that right now he's taking advantage of his share price and he's issuing more debt, the convertible debt.
Oh,
Um, so like it's almost like he's like if you want to own MicroStrategy, for me it's leveraged Bitcoin.
Mhm.
So he's basically like turning the leverage back up there because as an investor in MicroStrategy, I want to see the leverage there. So he's turning the leverage back up, which I think is really cool. And it's also got the double effect that it's going to pump the price of Bitcoin because now he's going to be buying $600 million more of Bitcoin, which is
hmm
pretty crazy. Um, so yeah, we're really bullish on MicroStrategy. I think MicroStrategy is going to outperform the price of Bitcoin. Um, if he keeps on taking on debt to do it, it's going to continue to outperform the price of Bitcoin. So really bullish on that. Bitcoin miners are like kind of hit and miss. I think that my favorites are Marathon. Uh, they have a lot of Bitcoin relative to
Yeah,
their yeah. So I
yeah.
think that's cool. Like
My Riot and Odd 8 are struggling compared to Marathon.
yeah, yeah. I did a tweet about Hut 8 yesterday. I gotta dig into that one, but it's like down a lot. But
Yeah,
relative to they have a lot of Bitcoin, which is kind of cool to see. Like it's almost like is it undervalued? Like I don't know the details of their operations though.
yeah,
They must not be doing too well there. But
yeah,
Clean Spark's great. I don't know any Clean Spark, but they just seem to be like operating on like at a really high level. They're
yeah.
acquiring Bitcoin.
They use renewable energy for their Bitcoin, so I think that's why their operational costs are not that high. I also don't own them. I did not think that that strategy was gonna work because I was trying to figure out why they're gonna get access to all of that, but
Mm.
they seem to be doing well.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I was gonna try to find that tweet, but the one about the miners, I didn't find it there.
I have to
Yeah.
refresh.
Oh, good. No problem. Absolutely. Well, listen, gentlemen, this has been an absolutely incredible one. Mr. Mark, just please consider this your an extension of your next invitation to join us again on the show. We would like to
okay,
have you
yeah,
back
definitely.
to
Yeah, it
talk
was
to
fun.
Absolutely, man. I think our mission is to keep getting this message out there for everyone that needs to wake up, right? Because I think that the Bitcoin mission, as we mentioned, is one for our generation, and we must take it seriously because I don't know, there's not been another thing like this on the face of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Really
So
excited.
yeah, to
I
me that
think.
is a pretty big deal, and it is ours. As I mentioned at the beginning of this recording here, it is really ours to shape the future of
Yeah.
finance. You know,
Hmm.
yeah. Uh, Anything else you want to share with the people? Any final thoughts? Actually, before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to share this again. Please, please, please be sure to check out uh, Mark Harvey on the X. Okay. Is that your, were you off roading your Cybertruck, by the way?
That's not my Cybertruck. That's my. That's This has been on my wallpaper for like 4 years. That's my vision.
Oh, yeah.
I have not got my Cybertruck yet, but yeah, when I do, that will be
We have
me.
something in
I
common.
know you guys should be Cybertruck brothers, man. And Double OA loves the Cybertruck as well.
I was buying
All
some
right.
shit by Inos so
Yeah.
I could buy a Cybertruck.
Absolutely.
I'm not selling my Bitcoin.
Oh, me
Absolutely.
neither. Yeah,
All right.
I'll figure out. They need to drop the price of those things because
Absolutely.
it's more than I was supposed to pay for one.
P2P,
Yeah,
Bitcoin
it's
standard.
Um,
it's way up there. Well, listen. Yes, please follow Mark on X. Of course, be sure to check out markharveyresearch.com for some very juicy, juicy articles on Bitcoin, debt, inflation, okay, all these financial things that you need to know. And of course, before we close this one out, ladies and gentlemen, okay, we'd just like to share this one again one more time so you guys ever understand what's going on here. This is like the flag of Bitcoin, if you will. Are you familiar with this, Mark?
oh yeah,
Of
definitely.
course, yes. It's like, oh yeah.
Hey, man, a peer to peer version of electronic cash that will allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. That is why we are gathered here today. Okay, incredible technology, very powerful. Mark, please, final word is yours, sir. Anything else you want to share with the people?
Yeah. Nothing else really. I appreciate the shout outs there. Um, yeah, nothing in closing out. Appreciate the time. This
Yeah,
is really fun, and yeah, if I'm posting this on mine, I think people should follow you guys because I follow your guys' content. It's really fun to watch. So um, yeah,
hey,
appreciate you having me on.
thank you, sir. That means a lot to us. You know, we're just the everyday guy,
Yeah,
the everyday
Thanks.
people in Bitcoin trying to send a message to other people like ourselves, but they don't
Yeah,
seem to be able to wake up. So,
keep
yes,
spreading the
final.
word. Yeah.
Yes, we'll keep spreading the word. Extremely powerful. Thank you so much, and
All
keep
right.
doing what you're doing. Can't wait until next time. We're gonna
Yeah.
definitely come back to this once Bitcoin has, especially once it crosses that 100K, man. I'd like to see what
Oh yeah.
you have going on
Okay.
in your
Yeah.
mind as far as Bitcoin back at that point in time. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Hopefully,
would
I
say
have
that. Go
I have
ahead.
something
Go
else
ahead.
written out. I have something else written. We could probably talk about at that point too. I'm working on a couple of other things on the side. So
Oh yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Do you want to give us a heads up so we can prepare our
Uh,
minds as well?
yeah. Okay.
Name it.
The one I'm working on right now is Bitcoin versus crypto. It's kind of like why I only buy Bitcoin, not crypto, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot
Yes.
of people they're gonna get really caught up in
Wrecked.
this bull cycle
You know
buying
what?
dog coins.
I am very excited you said that. I would like for us to do that. Please let me know whenever you're ready,
Yeah.
because I'll share my own experiences as well, right, around that, and I'm going to find some other examples as well, which
Oh man, it's
I can
gonna be
add. I think it's going to be a
it's gonna
very,
be fun.
yeah, it's going to be a fun show.
That should, yeah. Sounds good.
Right,
It's gonna be so much fun.
right.
Oh, well, before we go though, there is a word out there that Mark is gonna be copywriting. Do not touch it. Bitcoin is the only asset that gets to distribute wealth before anybody than any other asset out there.
Yes, yes, I do have to say that
Yeah,
that is something.
that's a
Walking
yeah,
away from this,
yeah,
you unlocked a certain part of my mind. So I am extremely grateful that we did this because
yeah.
that is something that I just not. I've always looked at that like, well, why are these people giving their money over to BlackRock to buy the Bitcoin for them when you can get it
Hmm.
yourself? But At the same time, the reality is not everyone is going to hold Bitcoin. Not everyone was going to hold a Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the wealth transfer is for those who are up and awake
Yeah.
and holding. Yeah,
The actual Bitcoin.
incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a sharp one. Absolutely love it. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay. Be sure to check out Mark as well. And until next time, brazen out.
Double O.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hey, amazing.